There are names that when spoken send a chill like that of a prison cell down the spine. At the Tower of London, death did not come in an instant. It seeped through the cracks of stone, patiently gnawing away at every shred of hope and strangling life in a terrifying silence. You were forced to taste the very limits of fear, from the crack of bones under torture to the icy touch of the axe against your neck, from the dragging of chains across the dark floor to the cracking of bones, and finally, the keen, icy chill of the executioner's axe. There was no salvation from physicians, and no miracle to be found in prayers.
What has truly lain beneath the foundations of this fortress for 900 years? How can lifeless stones still carry the breath of so much brutality?
Today, through AI Reconstruction technology, we will peel back each layer of time to resurrect a brutal reality where every stone is stained with blood and every step leads toward the abyss of destruction. The Blood-Stained Stones, 1078–1100. First look upon this strip of land along the River Thames, once the free breath of London, now being choked by a colossal stone construction site. By the year 1078, London was no longer an open city. The rise of the White Tower severed every familiar structure of the old town. The low wooden houses suddenly seemed smaller, more pitiful beneath the shadow of its cold white stone walls. The tower did not grow alongside the city, it rose to crush it. A monolithic structure looming alien and hostile, reducing everything around it to scattered remnants. The presence of Caen stone carried a ruthless authority. It erased riverside paths that had existed for centuries. The people's sightlines were cut short by rigid ashen blocks. Streets were no longer places of encounter. They became narrow channels watched over by deadly apertures above. Living space no longer belonged to human beings. It belonged to domination. Now come closer with me. Let artificial intelligence peel back the fog of the past. Before you lies a barren scene. Massive stone blocks are scattered like the white bones of an ancient beast. Crude wooden scaffolding is driven deep into the ground, rising like gaunt arms clawing at London's ashen sky. You can see enslaved laborers bent double their steps, sinking into mud, mixed with razor-sharp stone fragments. There is no splendor of royal power here, only the raw brutality of forced labor. The surrounding air is thick with the acrid stench of quicklime, a fine white dust that clings to the lungs and clouds weary eyes. There is no birdsong here, no whisper of wind, only the sound of metal striking dry stone, echoing and rebounding with hollow indifference. Sound is not absorbed in this place. It is hurled back by the stone walls, forming a cold noise that closes in on the human mind. The stream of people moves in absolute silence. They do not look up at the tower's grandeur, for every upward glance reveals only their own smallness. They move slowly, cautiously, as though each step were treading upon their own freedom, buried beneath those foundations. Here, stone is not merely a building material. Stone is an occupation. The Tower of London continues to rise day by day, but I put this question to you: is this a great masterpiece, or the beginning of a colossal stone tomb? From these very first stones, the history of torture and imprisonment began to fossilize. Expansion and the deadly traps, 12th–13th centuries. We now leave the muddy construction sites behind and step into an era when the Tower of London was no longer a solitary structure. It is growing of its own accord like a colossal stone organism, expanding and devouring the space around it. In the 12th and 13th centuries, under the ambitions of Richard the Lionheart and Henry III, London was forced to confront a new reality: absolute isolation. It became an impregnable fortress where every stone was laid with the sole purpose of defending the throne from all enemies. The surrounding curtain walls began to rise and stretch outward like stone arms encircling the White Tower. Try to imagine yourself standing on a small boat, drifting slowly across the deep, icy moat, looking up at the towering curtain wall before you. Do you feel as though you are entering a labyrinth where every corner could be a deadly trap? Now look at the pitch-black ring encircling the fortress. This is the deep moat system, a lethal boundary dredged to ensure that no one could ever escape. Its surface is unnervingly still. Those murky waters hold more than mud and silt. They conceal secrets that were never meant to surface. Move closer to the watchtowers, such as the bell tower. Their narrow windows resemble lifeless eyes staring down. Should you venture into this area, do not be careless. A trapdoor, a twisting narrow staircase, or hidden traps beneath the floor could turn you into prey in an instant. The reconstructed footage reveals every trace of mold and every shadowed crack, where the wind howls through forming sounds like prolonged moans. If you dare to draw closer, pay attention to every detail: the massive iron doors, the pulley-operated drawbridges designed to drop anyone who attempted to cross, and the arrow slits in the walls where shafts could be loosed at any moment.
Can you feel the power of these defensive strategies? Every architectural element, from the limestone-thick curtain walls to the soaring watchtowers, tells the story of an age in which survival meant absolute vigilance.
When viewed from above, the tower reveals itself as more than a prison, a fortress, or an administrative center. It is a system of deadly traps where any step could be an intruder's last. And in that moment, you understand medieval London was no place for the faint of heart.
Here, architecture had become the most ruthless form of psychological warfare. In a fortress deemed impregnable like this, who do you think was truly imprisoned? The captives in the dungeons below, or the kings themselves, trembling behind walls of stone?
The Traitors Gate and the obsession with imprisonment. 14th unto 16th centuries. But if the walls and moats were built to keep enemies out from this point onward, the tower began to open another entrance, quieter, colder, and reserved for those who had once stood very close to the throne. Look into the darkness yawning open behind that thick veil of fog. That is the Traitors Gate. By this point, the tower had changed its role. It was no longer merely a defensive fortress, it had become the final destination for those who had once stood very close to power. And the path that led there was not a grand avenue, but the River Thames. Imagine yourself seated in a small wooden boat, rocking gently amid the thick morning fog. The river water is pitch black and icy, lapping softly against the hull like a countdown. You do not need to ask where you are going, everyone knows. Ahead, a low, shadowed arched gate slowly emerges from the mist, the Traitors Gate. As the boat glides close along the damp stone wall, you can smell moss river water and the scent of despair. Important political prisoners cloaked in silent black garments draw nearer to that low, stunted stone arch. No one speaks a word. Do you notice? They do not look at one another, nor do they look up at the guards. Their eyes are fixed on the deep darkness of the passage leading down into the dungeons. Here, stone and water conspired to create an eternal trap. The heavy iron gate slowly lowered behind the boat. In that very moment, ask yourself, if it were you, what hope would you still cling to?
The Traitors Gate was not merely an entrance. It was the final boundary between the world of the living and the world of the forgotten. Those who passed through it were not common criminals. They were fallen queens, treacherous nobles, suspected advisors, names once whispered in palace halls, now erased in silence.
Do you feel the tremor of the rushing water beneath the hull? It is not merely water. It is the current of fate sweeping away the last remnants of hope for survival. The small boat is swallowed between two colossal walls that are slowly closing in. The space itself seems to tighten, crushing every breath. From this moment on, the Tower of London officially assumed its most fearsome reputation, a royal prison where no overt torture was necessary. Time, darkness, and waiting alone were enough to break a person.
Passing through the Traitors Gate did not mean an immediate death sentence. It was crueler than that. It meant being trapped, imprisoned in fear, in uncertainty, and in the haunting question that returned every night. Will I still be alive to see the light tomorrow?
And when the Iron Gate closed completely, remember, this very few who passed through ever walked out again on their own 2 feet.
The Traitors Gate still stands, a scar of history that will never heal. But I leave you with this thought. Is the true trap in these walls?
Or in the very ambition or of those who brought themselves here?
The torture chamber and screams in the night tortured, Tudor era, 16th century. If the Traitors Gate was where hope was locked away behind you, then the stone steps leading down to the dungeons are where humanity begins to be crushed, beat by beat. Follow me, and watch your every step, for the light above is slowly fading. In the 16th century, under Henry VIII and Elizabeth I, the Tower of London was no longer merely a place of confinement. It had become a workshop of pain. The air here is damp, cold, and thick, as if the very stone walls, meters thick, had absorbed centuries of pain. Rusted iron implements lie silently, yet menacingly. Do you hear it? Not screams, but the heavy silence of those who know what is about to happen. Come closer with me. Before you lies the rack, the bone-stretching machine. Imagine a body bound tight, each slow turn, pulling tendons, joints, and even the will itself. Every harsh crack resonates not just through flesh and bone, but through shattered belief. And if you think nothing could be more cruel, look beside you, the Scavenger's daughter, a device that folds the body, crushes the lungs, and drives blood to the head until the victim can no longer breathe. When you look at the rust-stained bars and the thick darkness clinging to them, do you see an instrument of justice or the embodiment of madness? Long shadows stretch across the cold stone walls. They are the shadows of the torturers, those tasked with breaking the will of scholars, priests, or rebels. Here, confession mattered more than truth, and life was merely a variable to be sacrificed. Within walls meters thick, the space offers no echo. Every plea is swallowed by the silence of stone. Stone is not merely a shelter. Stone is an accomplice keeping the most horrifying secrets. At night, when all of London slumbers, this dungeon awakens. Not with light, but with screams swallowed by stone, reverberating back as distorted echoes. Listen closely. If you stand here long enough, can you tell where the wind ends and the remnants of human cries begin? By this time, the tower no longer needed to hang heads outside the gate as a warning. The mere existence of these dark chambers was enough. Royal authority compelled the entire country to bow in silent submission. And remember, many have walked out of this torture chamber, but none of them ever remained themselves. The executioner's axe on Tower Hill, 16th, 17th centuries. After the darkness of the torture chambers, history no longer whispered. It stepped into the light upon an open mound where all of London could see. Tower Hill, a place where the air is thick with anticipation and morbid curiosity. In the reconstructed view, thousands of people crowd the hill, all focused on a single point. You need not ask why it is so full. Everyone has come to witness death. It is a horrifying spectacle where justice and cruelty merge into one. On Tower Hill, the initial scaffold was constructed with chilling simplicity, a wooden platform, a low beam, and the heavy axe set ready beside it. Sunlight glinted off the steel blade, a fleeting flash, but enough to make you squint. It might have been the last light the condemned ever saw. Weave through the murmuring crowd. Historical figures emerge not as queens or monarchs, but merely as bodies about to be stripped of their heads. Anne Boleyn, once the center of the entire court, now kneels on the grass of Tower Green, reserved for the private executions of royalty. No frenzied crowd, no cheering, only a heavy silence, and the sword swings so swiftly that you can barely register what has ended. As for Lady Jane Grey, the 9 Days Queen, she was not granted that privilege. Led out to Tower Hill, she faced a sea of waiting spectators. Can you imagine it? A girl not yet 20 blindfolded, reaching out to find the wooden block. Where is the block? That question, so simple yet filled with panic, made the entire crowd pause for a moment. As the axe fell, the once noisy crowd froze. Thousands of faces held their breath in unison, eyes wide fixed on the wooden block. Do you see the black crows perched on the nearby tower roofs? They do not fly away, they are waiting. These executions were not merely sentences, they were displays of power. Today, Tower Hill may be a quiet park, but I want you to look at this footage once more. What do you see in the eyes of that screaming crowd? True justice, or merely the satisfaction of a thirst for violence?
Welcome to the tower. Please have your ticket.
The past does not disappear, it overlays the present. Like two layers of film playing at the same time.
Now look at the yeoman warders in their vivid red uniforms. AI has helped us capture the moment when their eyes gaze toward the dark corners of the fortress. They are not merely guides, they are keepers of the flame for stories of Anne Boleyn's ghost and the lost princes. Black ravens spread their wings across the tower grounds. According to legend, if the ravens ever leave, the kingdom will fall. They remain there, eternal witnesses spanning the centuries. And as you leave blending into the crowd of 2026, ask yourself one final question.
If these walls could speak, would they forgive or simply remember?
For the Tower of London is not merely a heritage site, it is an eternal witness, and witnesses never rest. The Tower of London still stands, not as a victor, but as a survivor.
How many entered here accused of a treason, and how many were simply victims of power? Has history truly closed its chapter, or is it merely changing shape in the modern world?
If you lived in that era standing before the Tower of London, would you be a spectator in the crowd, or the next name called?
If you believe that stories like these should not be forgotten, if you want to continue exploring the darkest corners of human history with me, subscribe to the channel, hit like, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next journeys. Thank you for joining me. See you next time.